Good morning, Year 11, and welcome today to your conflict and tension walkthrough for question 3 on the conflict and tension paper. So, as with any question, what we need to do is we need to analyse the question. We need to know what the question is asking us. That is the very first thing that we do. So, question 3 will always be write an account. So, it'll be write an account of something. So this question says, write an account of how events in Manchuria led to a rise in international tension. So first of all, whenever you see write an account, you cross that out and you write explain. Explain how events in Manchuria led to a rise in international tension, 8 marks. Now, like with any question, I now ask myself, what part of history is this question asking me about? And it's asking me about events in Manchuria. So I know I need to talk about something that's happened in Manchuria, and then I need to know what is the rest of the question asking me about. And it's asking me about how this led to a rise in international tension. And really it's that word tension that's important. So I know that tension is a time of worry, stress, and international, bringing in nations from across the world. So how did it lead to tension? That's the main part of the question. So what you'll notice with this, there's no sources. It is a lot simpler to answer and quicker to answer than some of the source questions. As a result of that, it is 8 marks. So I would suggest all you need to spend on this is 10 minutes. So you only need to spend 8 to 10 minutes answering this question. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at how to answer the question, and I'm going to show you first of all how to pick up some marks. So 1 to 2 marks, if you're struggling, how you go about picking up those marks. And really, to pick up marks for this question, it's fairly straightforward. What you need to do, and to pick up marks in any question, is just tell me about the history the question is asking us about. So we already know that it's asking us about events in Manchuria. So I'm just going to write down everything I can remember about events in Manchuria. So all of this here is about events in Manchuria. I know that in February 1932, Japan invaded Manchuria. I know that Japan did this because they were poor after the Great Depression. Japan wanted the land because it would make them richer. The League weren't happy, told Japan to stop the war and sent Lord Lytton to investigate. Lord Lytton blamed Japan and Japan left the League. You just writing down what you know there about events in Manchuria will pick you up a couple of marks. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that if you think, oh, I'm struggling with this question. Now, some of you already should be identifying that this question is asking us about 2 things: events in Manchuria and how it led to a rise in international tension. So what needs to happen next is we need to add, to get higher marks, some of this, how it led to a rise in international tension, and we need to reduce the bits in green. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at how to get those half marks all the way up to 6 out of 8 marks, which really those 6 out of 8 marks is what we should all be aiming for on this question. If you want top marks though, if you want a grade 9, you need to be waiting for the next section really. So what you will see in this answer is you will see, or what you need to see, and what the examiner is looking for, is that you talk about events in Manchuria, you talk about how it led to a rise in international tension, you use specific detail, and you use the idea of so what. So this meant that, this led to, as a result. Okay, so I'm just going to add that there. Led, meant, as a result. So that's what the examiner is looking for here. So I started off by saying, in February 1932, Japan invaded Manchuria. Okay, I would get a mark for that. So I can see that is telling me about events in Manchuria. So as an examiner, you've told me about the events in Manchuria, and I can see this is detailed. Okay, so I'm going to give it a tick at the end of the sentence. Okay, so What I've done then is I've gone straight into talking about the pink. I've gone straight into talking about how it led to a rise in international tension. So the invasion. So I've talked about Japan invading Manchuria here. So the next sentence has to be about the invasion. So the invasion led to a rise in international tension because Japan had promised to stop the war. Japan had made a promise to stop war. However, Japan had ignored their promise and started one. Okay, that has some detail because obviously they had promised to stop the war. Now, if I was improving this and to get more marks, I'll be talking about here how they obviously promised through the League of Nations. So the purple pen is just some improvement. So I'd be adding some information about the League of Nations. And what I'm looking for now is further detail on how it led to tension. So what if Japan had ignored their promise and started one? So what if Japan had ignored their promise and started one? And you will see that here. You will see a so what. So what if Japan had ignored their promise and started a war? Well, this led to tension. If the League could not stop one of its own members going to war, that it would not be able to stop others. So again, what you can see there, it's got some detail, it's well explained, it follows on. So this here would be, I would argue, 4 out of 8. Because what you've got is you've got talk about events in Manchuria, you also talk about a rise in international tension, and you use some detail as you go along. And you also follow on by saying so what. So this is a good paragraph. Now some examiners might go, it's good, but does it lack a bit of detail? Which is why I've added the League of Nations in there. Could it give an example of how this meant the League couldn't stop its own members going to war? Or when it says it would not be able to stop others, such as... just another piece of detail there might push us up. But for me, that's, it's a level 2, it's a 3 or 4 out of 8. So to get 6 out of 8, you need to do another paragraph just like this. So in my next paragraph, I know again, I need to tell you about events in Manchuria. But I can't tell you about Japan invading Manchuria because I've already talked about that. So this time I'm going to say the League failed to get Japan to withdraw from Manchuria even after issuing moral condemnation against Japan. Now when as an examiner I'm looking at that and I'm seeing, yeah, excellent, okay. So the League did fail to get Japan to withdraw from Manchuria, so that's detailed, even after issuing moral condemnation, that key tier 3 word against Japan. So for me, this is detailed, so I'm going to give it 2 ticks, specific detail, because it's got issuing moral condemnation, so that there is a tier 3 term, and it's detailed here, so it's good to see that. And if you notice above, there is no tier 3 here, so this already, tier 3, top level vocabulary, keywords, leads to more of an impression on the examiner. So I'm going to tier 3 keywords. So what I need to do now is explain how this led to a rise in international tension. And what I'd be underlining here is the fact that the League failed to get Japan to withdraw. So what if the League failed to get Japan to withdraw? Well, the failure of the League led to tension rising because it showed the League's main way of dealing with issues was not working. So right there, I've gone on to kind of say, well, the League's issue, the way it's dealing with things is not working. There's no particular detail there. Now, some of you may struggle with the so what idea to expand on your explanation, and that's fine. And what I've done here is I've gone back to telling me about events in Manchuria. So, because the failure of the League led to a tension rising, because it showed the League's main way of dealing issues with not working, well, what did that then lead to? So, what did it lead to if the League's main way of dealing with issues was not working. So I'm going to underline the fact that, the League is not working. And as a result of this, Hitler took advantage and broke the Treaty of Versailles and the Locarno Pact. So yeah, he did actually do that. So because of the Manchuria crisis, it's caused this. And how did that then lead to tension? Well, this led to tension because it showed Hitler's intention was to go to war because the Versailles and Locarno treaties were designed to stop future war with Germany. So again, detail. Now what we've got there is, in this last bit here, it's not necessarily about Manchuria, but what it does do is it explains straight away how events in Manchuria led to tension, because Japan failing to withdraw allows Hitler to feel confident, and this then leads to further international tension. So we are bringing in other ideas from the topic. But ultimately, what you needed to have done in this question to get 6 out of 8 was tell me about an event in Manchuria, how it led to international tension, and so with this question, with question 3, I would always be saying if you want those top grades at History GCSE, you need to get full marks on them. Because this is a question where you can't really afford to lose marks if you want the top grades, and it's easier than your other questions to get full marks on it. So I'm going to show you now what a full mark answer looks like. So as you can see here, we've got like my criteria at the top. I want to see events in Manchuria. I want to see led to a rise in international tension. I want to see keywords, specific detail, and so what. So I start off with, in February 1932, Japan invaded Manchuria. And what you'll see there is perfect. It's simple, it's effective, it's got some detail. You've told me about events in Manchuria. Now, what you need to do now is you need to tell me about how it led to a rise in international tension. But to get top marks, as well as do so what in your explanation, you need to use groups for complexity. So I'm going to put a G for a group. And this will always indicate to the examiner that you're thinking about a level 4, that this is complexity. Okay, so I'll also highlight that for you in orange as we go through where there is complexity, because it can be groups, it could be long term and short term as well for this question. I would always focus on the groups though, the groups are easiest. So the invasion led to an immediate rise in tension for the League of Nations because Japan was a member of the League of Nations. So straight away I'm talking about it being a rise in tension for the League of Nations. So that's my group there that it's talking about. And you can see that I'm following that it's led to a rise in international tension. So I can see this is detailed. Japan is a member of the League of Nations, so I can give that a tick. But so what if Japan was a member of the League of Nations? So what? This meant that Japan had made a promise to stop war. However, Japan had ignored their promise and had started one. So again, there's some detail there. But so what if the if Japan had ignored the promise? So what if Japan had ignored the promise? Well, again, so what? This led to the international community questioning the point of the League of Nations, as if the League could not stop one of their own members from going to war. How would it stop nations outside of the League or a bigger war? So again, detail. How does this lead to tension rising? So this led to tension rising further as the League for the League as their reputation as a peacekeeping organisation was damaged. So that right there, if you did it once, would get you 4 out of 8 because it's only one paragraph. If you did it twice, it would get you 8 out of 8. And if we just go back to our success criteria, does it talk about events in Manchuria? Yes, it does. Does it talk about leading to a rise in international tension? Yes, it does. Does it use any, tier 3 keywords? I'm not picking any out right there, but what I would say it does is it keeps linking to the question. So, tension led to a rise in tension. And tension again. So it's using the word in the question. Does it use any specific detail? With the amount of detail it uses, even though it's not pinpoint, is fine. You can see it used the group. It's not talked about anything general. It's focusing on the tension it creates for the League of Nations, and that is what it puts it into the top marks. So that's the first paragraph done. Let's have a look at the second paragraph. So again, I need to start off by saying, if I just move it down a little bit, you can't really see that. So, the League failed to get Japan to withdraw from Manchuria even after issuing moral condemnation against Japan. So I can see here that they've talked about events in Manchuria. Fantastic. Now, I would say this is specific detail because it's used a tier 3 word in moral condemnation and everything it says is correct. So it's specific detail there. And you can see probably the difference. So moral condemnation, our tier 3 words, our key words, really linked to specific detail. So, I would then go and I would think, right, okay, how does Japan ignoring how does the League failing to get Japan to withdraw create international tension? So the League failing, so that word failing. So I've written the failure of the League led to tension rising for smaller nations. So again, that's my group there. I'm talking about the impact on, wrong colour. I'm talking about the impact on smaller nations, okay? Because it showed the League's covenant had no impact. So straight away here, League's covenant again, tier 3 word, specific detail, talking about a specific group. So what if the League's covenant had no impact? This meant that the League did not have the ability to force powerful nations from invading smaller nations, meaning that smaller nations were more at risk. Perfect. So if I'd left that there, that would probably get me 6 out of 8 marks, 7 out of 8 marks even. Okay? However, I want to secure that 8 out of 8 mark. And what I'm then going to do is, if I'm struggling to go further than this after my green point, if I'm struggling to say, well, I've talked about everything I can about smaller nations, then change the groups, okay? Change the groups you are talking about. So I'm just going to add this here that you can see led to a rise in international tension. But for example, I'm going to say, right, okay, the covenants failed, so what if the covenants failed? Well, this failure led to Hitler feeling more comfortable to break the Treaty of Versailles and Mussolini feeling comfortable to invade Abyssinia in 1935. So this here is not about events in Manchuria, and it's not necessarily about it leading to a rise in international tension, but it does link with events in Manchuria because it's what it caused. So I'm going to highlight this green because I've established a link. I said, furthermore, the League's failure led to Hitler feeling comfortable to break the Treaty of Versailles and Mussolini feeling comfortable to invade Abyssinia in 1935. And I would just add, that is because the League's covenant did not work. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to how that led to a rise in international tension. So, Hitler breaking the Treaty of Versailles then caused tension to rise for nations like France and Britain. So again, talking about different groups that worried Hitler would look to re-establish Germany as a great power and take revenge for the Treaty of Versailles. So this here is a really strong answer. So if we look at our success criteria, does it talk about events in Manchuria throughout? Yes, it does. Or what events in Manchuria led to. So this is what it led to, the event in Manchuria. Does it talk about in each one it leading to a rise in international tension? Yes, it does. And we can see that through the pink. For top marks, is there detail and specific detail and keywords throughout? Yes, there is. Does everything link together through so what? Yes, it does. And finally, is there complexity? Does it talk about different groups? Well, it talks about the tension for the League of Nations. It talks about tension for smaller nations. It talks about tension for France and Britain. And that is how you get top marks.